Hey, boys and girls, and welcome back to another session of Reading with Redden, where we are getting ready to finish up our book, Wonder by R.J. Palacio. We've only got a couple more days of reading, boys and girls, and we will be finished. Can you believe it? It's been quite a ride, right? So, when we last left off on the story, Augie had just gotten back from his nature reserve trip, and everything was good except for one little incident where some seventh grade kids started to bully him and his friends. Well, he thought that trip was a really great trip, and he thought they had ruined it for him. But mom told him, don't let one little thing ruin it for you. Remember, there's 24 hours in a day. So if you wake up on the wrong side of the pillow, remember, you have 23 more hours in a day to make sure you get that right. Also, when we left off, Augie came home from his trip and he had a nice surprise waiting for him. It was a brand new puppy. So today, as we read, we're going to get to learn a little bit more about his puppy, but we're also going to be close to the end of the school year. Can you believe it? When we started this story, Augie was a brand new kid in a brand new school for the very first time ever in his life, and he was entering fifth grade. So now that we're at this point, Augie's going to be turning into a sixth grader. What about you? What grade are you going into next year? So let's hear a little bit more about Augie's experience. Bear. We called the puppy Bear because Mom first saw him. She said he looked just like a little bear cub. I said that's what we should call him, and everyone agreed that that was the perfect name. I took the next day off from school, not because my elbow was hurting me, which it was, but so I could play with Bear all day long. Mom let Via stay home from school too, so the two of us took turns cuddling with Bear and playing tug of war with him. We had kept all of Daisy's old toys and we brought them out now to see which one he'd like best. It was fun hanging out with Via all day, just the two of us. It was like old times, like before I started going to school. Back then, I couldn't wait for her to come home from school so she could play with me before starting her homework. Now that we're older, though, and I'm going to school and have friends of my own that I hang out with, we never do that anymore. So it was nice hanging out with her, laughing and playing. I think she liked it too. The shift. When I went back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were. A monumental shift, a seismic shift, maybe even a cosmic shift. Whatever you want to call it, it was a big shift. Everyone, not just in our grade, but every grade, had heard about what had happened to us with the seventh graders. So suddenly, I wasn't known for what I'd always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went was that Amos had gotten into a major fist fight with the kid, and Miles and Henry and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too. And the escape across the field became this whole long adventure through a cornfield maze and into the deep, dark woods. Jack's version of the story was probably the best because he's so funny. But in whatever version of the story, and no matter who was telling it, two things always stayed the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me. And those guys, Amos, Henry, and Miles, protected me. And now that they protected me, I was different to them. It was like I was one of them. They all called me Little Dude. Now, even the jocks. These big dudes I barely even knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of it was that Amos became super popular, and Julian, because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry were hanging out with Amos all the time now, like they switched their best friends. I'd like to be able to be like that with Julian, started treating me better, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me dirty looks across the room. He still never talked to me or Jack, but he was the only one who was like that now. And me and Jack, we couldn't care less. Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tushman called me into his office to tell me they had found out the names of the 7th graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of names that didn't mean anything to me, and then he said the last name, Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize that name? He said. They called him Eddie. Right. Well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid headband. The right piece was completely gone and the left one was mangled. The band that connected the two, the Lobot part, was bent down the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tushman. I looked at my hearing aid. No, I don't think so, I shrugged. I'm being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk about it with your parents tonight? I'll call your mom tomorrow to talk about it with her, too. Would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail, but they probably go to juvie court, and maybe they'll learn a lesson that way. Trust me, that Eddie kid is not learning any lessons, I joked. He sat down behind his desk. Augie, why don't you sit down a second, he said. I sat down. All the things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same mirrored cube, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like years ago. Hard to believe this year's over, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Augie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been good, I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You're one of our top students. Congrats on the high honor roll. Thanks, yeah, that's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrow. Certainly that night at the nature reserve was one of the low points. Yeah, I nodded. But it was kind of also good, too. In what way? Well, you know, how people stood up for me and stuff. That was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah. I know in school things got a little hairy with Julian at times. I had to admit he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff? I asked him. Middle school directors have a way of knowing about a lot of stuff. Do you have, like, secret security cameras in the hallway? I joked. And microphones everywhere, he laughed. No, seriously, he laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh. But teachers know more than kids think, Augie. I wish you and Jack had come to me about the mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you, middle school directors know all. It wasn't that big a deal, I answered, and we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if it's public yet, he said, though it will be soon anyway. But Julian Albanes is not coming back to Beecher Prep next year. What? I said. I honestly couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think Beecher Prep is a good fit for him, Mr. Tushman continued, raising his shoulders. Wow, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. Then suddenly I noticed that the pumpkin portrait that used to sit behind his desk was gone, and my drawing, my self-portrait as an animal that I drew for the New Year art show, was now framed and hanging behind his desk. Hey, that's mine, I pointed. Mr. Tushman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck? I nodded. I love this piece, Augie, he said. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked her if I could keep it for my wall. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh, yeah, nice. I've been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? What do you mean? I answered. That was the assignment. Yes, but why a duck? He said. Is it safe to assume that it was because of the story of the duckling that turned into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tushman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really? Huh? Here I was looking for symbolism and metaphors, and sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said, not quite getting why he thought that was so funny. He laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Augie, thanks for chatting with me, he said finally. I just want you to know it's truly a pleasure having you here at Beecher Prep, and I'm really looking forward to the next year. He reached across the desk and we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tushman. So, boys and girls, we have a short day today because tomorrow we're going to get to hear about 5th grade graduation. So, as we finish reading, how do you think things are going for Augie? Have they started to turn around completely for him? What do you think he's thinking of his 5th grade year and his first year in school? How do you think his parents feel now that they've sent him to school this year? Think about how everyone treated him in the beginning of the story and how they're treating him now. What differences and what's the big changes that you see? Which ones were changes that were positive changes and which ones were negative? Think about that as you get ready to go into a new school year maybe. Or the next time you start a new sport, or the next time you venture out to get new friends. Think about how the way you treat someone now can impact them later in life. Think about how people treat you and how that has impacted your life. What changes would you like to see? Think about those changes and be the change you want to see in everyone. So the next time you interact with someone, think about how you would want them to treat you, because later on you would want someone to treat you that way or better. So until the next time on another session of Reading with Redden, I will see everyone later. Have a great evening, boys and girls.